Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&D Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jack Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
Let's go. Master of all things tabletop. With the Paladins of Podcast. They ruin the games you love by talking rules that suck, how to build kick-ass encounters, destroy worlds, and really get your players invested. So go ahead and throw that fistful of dice at someone. Because we're going on a side quest.
What's up,
Hey, Rob?
Yeah! Haha, you want to do it today?
Hi, I'm Rob, and this is Eli, and welcome to Side Quests. How are you doing, Eli? Oh, I'm doing good, Rob. How are you doing? Oh, my hand.
Why am I even here? You got it nailed, bro. Right to the T. All right, Paladins of Podcast are back. So, because of timing on how this one works out, my man, I would like to let all of our listeners know that you've got a big trip coming up, and we've been looking for guest spots and hosts to expand side quests, and those episodes will be available while you are on your trip.
Yeah, I'm going to be vacationing in Portugal. And so while that's happening, we're going to have some guests. It's going to be exciting. I'm still on some of them because we recorded them before I left.
Every time we talk about that, I always want to say it's from the future, but it's always from the past, like everything we do. So,
yeah, we can't disclose it's from the future because then it's, we're altering something time paradox.
Space-time continuum. So, you ever think about the space-time continuum and just the fact that maybe it's always supposed to happen? Like,
no, not really. I almost never think about the time-space compendium.
Really?
Continuum. No.
I think about it in such weird ways. I'm like, if somebody was to come back from the future, no matter what happens, that event will always happen because that's how the future has been written for the past.
Maybe.
You can't change it. Everything you do to change it is going to result in it happening. So, like, no matter what, you will eventually always be the person who go back to talk to yourself about as doing something stupid. And that's eventually what causes you to end up causing the event. I think about that way more often than I probably should.
Well, it might not be true.
That's true. Interesting fact, though. Scientists, when I say they, scientists believe that they have found pure evidence of actual multiverse. And this was a few years ago. The idea behind it was there's a specific particle that is only in stable condition as it's destabilizing. So it has to exist in two states at the same time, which it cannot technically or realistically do, yet it does, and the only way for it to do that is to take up two positions in different realities at the same time, converge to one point. Very kind of trippy, but hey, kind of cool. Anyhow.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but there's a place called Four Corners, and it's a place where you can stand in 4 states at once.
Well, guys, thanks for tuning in to Side Quest. It's the shortest episode we've had to date. Yes, you're right. I've heard about it. I've never been there, but I've seen pictures of people who've stood on the little plaque. So, it's kind of neat.
But that's an entire... that's a bad joke. But I do remember reading about that. It's fascinating.
The particle thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nuts. nuts. I've always thought or hoped something more would come of it, but A, it hasn't, and B, it just furthered my desire to play Space Marines, because science fiction in space is not space without Space Marines. Damn, dude. I'm never going to get to play Space Marines.
You know, the only person that can create that change is you. Run some different games.
Okay, you're right. Let me rephrase. I want somebody else to run Space Marines so I can play it.
You probably need to look into... I'm betting if you look into the 40K, like, if you look at the fandom of the war game, you're more likely to find gamers who play the RPG game rather than looking at RPG gamers who play Dark Heresy.
True. And Age of Sigmar is their newest, I believe their newest RPG-style book, or no, Soulbound. I think it's Soulbound. Dude, the game looks pretty badass, but still, end of the day, you're just rolling dice and it's the same game, new flavor.
I'm a big fan of Warhammer Quest.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's a kind of pseudo. It's a dungeon delving, like tile based game.
Okay.
Loosely based on the same kind of mechanics as the fantasy role playing, but it's a great way where you could play it that way. So you could play Warhammer Fantasy GM-less, where there's just 100 random tables to roll from, and you run into danger and chaos and try to complete quests, and most often you die a horrible death.
I think that's absolutely fair. I think that makes it fun and exciting. And
it fits the genre.
Yeah, dude, for sure. 40K is known for being rather ridiculous and deadly, depending on how you play. So I like that. But then again, you always got those chads and those other dickheads who decide that they're just going to dominate the table, and it makes it very unfriendly for new players.
I think Warhammer handles it in a pretty good way. A lot of the death and deadly, at least for there's a squad level one for kind of the Imperial Guard, and the Imperial Guard, like, their whole shtick is they're just humans in space, and so they die by the thousands. But luckily, humans are like rabbits. And so in this game, like, you don't play like just one human, you play a squad. And so that way, when you're adventuring and you die, you're just like, all right, time for, here's the name, slap him in, go forth.
Dig it.
Another game that does it really well is Planet Mercenary, which...
You had mentioned that one before, but I don't think I got a chance to buy into that yet.
Yeah, that's it's one where in this one you play more of a forward-facing character, but you always have a squad of kind of other mercenaries around you that you can command to do things, and I mean, that's basically part of your character. But they all start as nameless chumps who can just die, and whatever, you just add a new one until they start doing something awesome or like try to save your life, and then they start gaining names and things that carry forth.
Yeah, I do remember how we talked about that. It sounded incredibly interesting. Neat. But again, I haven't had a chance to really buy in. So I have been busy plucking away at my 5e adventure. And I'm kind of excited because I think I've picked a small direction for it.
What is the direction you've chosen?
Mega Dungeon.
That's not a small direction.
Okay, well, I've got like 7 rooms, and it's a mega dungeon. Yay!
How is it a mega dungeon with 7 rooms?
It's just a start, man. Like, when you do a mega dungeon, do you start with all 700 rooms? Or the first 7?
Well, you said you're creating a small adventure here.
No, not anymore. I'm just going to keep going.
Not anymore.
Well,
I mean, would challenge you to keep your original frame and try to finish it.
Well, realistically, I mean, if you look at a lot of the mega dungeons that are out there and that are around, story is limited and it really just goes through a bunch of rooms and encounters.
Yeah.
That's the easiest stuff to really generate. And my story is essentially built. Like, that's all laid out in the foundation for the first, 7 pages. That's all I need. Now I just need 1,000,000 rooms for them to go through to complete that story.
So, have I told you about Dungeon 23?
You have, and I was going to ask how you're coming along.
Well, horribly. Absolutely horribly. Gonna have to restart, obviously, because I haven't been doing anything for it.
That's funny. Now, for the listeners at home, to help give them a frame of reference, in our recording, our online recording studios done through Discord, but we have a Dungeon 23 update channel, in which the last update was on January 3rd through that channel.
To be fair, even when I was doing updates, I didn't put a single one in there. I made it more days past that than the 3rd.
I made a few. But what's funny is, while I don't have the entirety of the plan for it designed, I'm still technically designing the dungeon, just not at a breakneck pace of 1 room or encounter per day.
So why are you expanding it to a mega dungeon? What's your... I thought you said you were going to have it finished by last Sunday.
I didn't. In fact, I put like 3 periods on a sentence to remind myself to come back to it later. But I decided I wanted something a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more deadly, and a little bit more thorough, because it seems like 5th edition is lacking a lot of that.
Why can't you do that in a shorter adventure?
I absolutely can, but 5th edition isn't lacking those. I want.
Oh, it's lacking
mega dungeons, deadly mega
dungeons,
deadly mega dungeons, full of traps that are meant to kill, maim, dismember, disfigure, and destroy.
So this is just a death dungeon.
I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. I just decided I'm going to keep adding rooms.
How deadly are you going to make it? Like, if using some D&D 5th edition terms, how deadly is your average challenge rating going to be?
Well, I know that in the initial interest is to develop a adventure for a party of, I think it was 4 to 6, levels 5 to 7. And then, by the end, if they survive, they'll walk out between 10 and 12.
So what is your, like, the average encounter? How much higher above their CR is it going to be? Or what is going to bring the challenge or the deadliness from your dungeon?
I'm actually really hoping traps, a few bosses, and DM decided wandering monsters. Mm-hmm.
So are you going to use, like, for a normal game, they're going to advance a little bit, they short rest, they advance, they short rest, they long rest. How are you going to challenge their resources? What do you use to tax the party or keep them on their back foot when they explore this dungeon?
I think I want to have what I'm going to currently call safe havens. So kind of like in Dark Souls, how you have the campfires. Something similar. Like, if you're in one of these safe havens, you'll be good to take your rest. Otherwise, it's a constant barrage of likely undead and waves of undead that you either have to survive or get through. Not always necessarily have to defeat every single one of them, but just a grind. Similar to Doom. Not Doom. Similar to Diablo. If I can get Diablo 3 on paper, I think I'd be happy.
Interesting.
Word, right? Like, who would... everybody likes throwing dice anyway. Just keep doing it.
Just throw a bunch of minions at them until... in hordes?
Yes!
Swarms? Yeah.
Yes, and then toss in one that doesn't die with one hit anyway. Do you remember the one hit point minion guys from, like, 4th Ed?
Yeah, minions. Yeah, where they'd usually be tougher to hit, but once you hit them...
Yeah, one hit, they'd be done. Maybe I'll bring something like that back. So that way it's not super taxing immediately, but after a lot of them, it is. And that should give an overwhelming feel.
I love minions, and I think, like, using minion-style mechanics is like such a great way to like tell a little bit different stories. Like especially in a lot of narrative games, minions are a staple. They make the players feel heroic. They're incredibly easy to defeat.
Yeah.
And occasionally you can like kind of group them together to do wild and crazy things as groups to challenge the players or to mix things up.
Yeah, I agree with that. Did you ever hear of the game Ninja Panda Taco?
Yeah.
The game is all about supervillains and their minions. Talking about minions, that's a ridiculous and fun game. If you need to kill a knight or something because not all your players show up, I strongly recommend that one. So, it's incredible. So before we started recording, I had a question, or maybe not a question. I don't remember. I was going to tell you something that happened in game.
Yeah, give it to me. What happened?
And I do remember that there was a question attached to this. So, Twisted Health Conditions, as they're now known, formerly Twisted Justice, went through the Ashland Mountains.
Okay.
They fought through a few hard encounters. All of them did survive, but it was very, very risky. And then they finally met essentially the avatar of the wizard Rake, who is now the large legendary mythic sleeping dragon below the mountains.
Good for them.
Yes. So he gave them a little bit of history, some information. They knew that he was all too powerful. They essentially looked at him like a venerable god because essentially, compared to their power level, that's what he is. Fair. Two of the players decided to absolutely just mouth off to him. And this is
All right.
where the question comes into play. Now, if you mouth off to a god and he just destroys you, which is what Rake had done to one of these players, they feel like it was not only justifiable and a worthy scenario to bring him down back to a human level, but to break his deific powerness, which is an exact contrast to my general belief. Like, if you bother somebody of great power who sees you as insignificant, it makes no difference whether you're alive or dead, and problems or insignificant inconveniences are just better eliminated. So, that's what he did. But they feel like they stuck it to him, and I don't get it.
Wait, they tried to eliminate?
No, they just mouthed off to him and got him to, as they put it, break his facade or bring him down to their level for just a petty offense. Like, he shouldn't even have cared about what they thought or what they said.
I mean, like, how did you have this character open up their facade to the players?
He had made an appearance through a constant scrying portal. He told everybody what he had been doing because they had asked. He presented the idea like, hey, I'm looking for the components to save the world, but I don't care if the world itself is collateral damage. I'm going to eliminate what I feel is the biggest problem here. And when they mouthed off to him, he let a few of them slide, but then he just breath weaponed them to death.
He killed them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so now you have some dead players?
One. He breath weaponed two of them, and one of them has an ability where he can divert a portion of damage from him to his mount, his celestial spiritual mount. So that actually saved his ass, and the other player toast. So,
okay.
Whereas he's not sad or bummed out about losing his character, he thinks it's an epic way to have gone out. He feels like it's a huge success that he brought Rake down to his level, broke his general powerful facade by eliminating a mere mortal when it shouldn't have even really made a difference to him.
What's the problem? It sounds like the player was happy. They confronted one of the godlike beings that appear in the game, and the godlike being responded?
Yeah.
Everyone seems happy.
I don't have a problem. My question is, where does that idea really stem from? Because I don't view it as, if you mouth off to a god and he kills you, as bringing the god down to my mortal level and trivial things. Insignificant, yes, but I agitated and irritated a powerful deity, and it was just easy to let me go.
I mean, if that's what brings the players joy, then that's what brings the players joy.
Thinking that they brought him down to that level, I mean, I think they've got the wrong idea of the guy at this point. Like, I don't know how to deliver that much information better.
Maybe. I'm like, how do you want this character to present to the party? Like, what do you... Yeah, like, how do you want the party to perceive Rake?
Almost as a singularly focused individual who will stop at nothing to reach his goal. His single, laser-focused, centuries-old goal. Like anything,
yeah, I mean, the players probably see that, but they also see that this Drake is willing to do anything in its path, which sounds like a pretty lawful evil character if we're going by the Gygaxian alignments.
Absolutely correct on the alignment thing there for him, for sure. I guess it's just when they say that they brought him down to their mortal level, I disagree with that. It's got to be a personal preference here. I don't think it was humanizing him by any means or bringing him down by a peg. Just removing insignificant inconveniences. It's like a hangnail. Just pull it off.
Yeah, and I mean, that's how the two parties could totally, like, him viewing it that way and the party viewing it as bringing the god down, those both can be true at the same time, right? Because the god doesn't care. It doesn't view it as going down a peg, because it was just, it was swatting a fly. Right. But for the fly got a god's attention. Like...
Okay. See, framing it that way helps me out quite a bit in this. Because, again, I mean, it's like, I couldn't quite grasp how they could frame that to feel like that was what happened. But you're right. To the fly, shit, I got their attention. Like, I mattered to a degree to something, somewhere.
But on the more maybe meta side of things, or maybe the more outside of what happens in game, is it seems like you're very hesitant to have a lot of consequences of players' actions come back at them. And a lot of the times you have put a lot of these big, bad, evil characters in front of the party a number of times. And it sounds like the party has maybe started doing this a little bit before, or has always been doing it, and the evil characters just ignored them. So... eventually,
that's happened.
Like, they're finally like, aha, we got the final bad guy that actually reacts evilly when we're assholes to them.
That's true. That's fair. Like, I don't just put these bad guys in the way to kill them immediately. It's usually there so we can play a long game, so it can build up taunting relations. But yeah, I think that also helps frame it, because it is a little different. So yeah, maybe more consequences now that they're level 6. So I think it works out.
Consequences work well at every level. Absolutely.
Speaking of leveling, my party decided to switch to milestone leveling.
How has that changed? Anything?
This way I can just power level them a little bit faster the way I want to.
Weren't you already arbitrarily giving them experience points and having them level up at all the same time anyway?
Yeah, but I think now we're going to be closer to every 3 games.
Okay. So here's my question. Previously, you had been giving rewards where people kind of get extra experience points for doing things, but in the end it didn't matter. How are you going to reward your players now, or are you just going to drop that?
I have an idea, but I'm not sure. Like, I've got the inklings of an idea. Let me say that.
What is your inkling of an idea?
Story feats.
Story feats?
Yep.
What are story feats?
They're feats that are not taken by leveling up through the level progression. However, they are earned in through the game. So, as you just that just probably played through. That was a text message from my wife. It's funny. Usually my phone's on vibrate. Grilled cheese sandwich. That's the Joker from Batman the Animated Series. Anyhow, story feats in Pathfinder are things that are obtained through actual roleplay and progressing through the story. So things like specifically heal 1,000 hit points of damage to yourself, or heal 1,000 hit points to other NPCs who have suffered traumatic events. Just award story feats.
Okay, and like how do they give like +1s in certain situations, or are they rather impactful?
They're rather impactful. They function just like a normal feat. They're just earned differently.
So how often do you think you'll give those out then?
I think it will depend on the story. It'll probably reflect on how well or often they play true to characters and things that they're supposed to be doing. So certain story feats have specific requirements, and sometimes I say, hey, you keep pushing this direction, I'll give you the story feat when you hit the accomplishment. You get the prize at the end. There's not a list of 1,000,000 of them. I think there's like 40 at most, spread across most of the Paizo and third-party material.
So if your characters are going to level up about every 3 levels, how often do you think you'll end up actually giving them story awards?
My hope is to really let them decide.
What?
Let them decide.
What
So
do you mean? You're the one that's prompting them.
Yep.
If you do keep doing this, you could gain this. How often are you going to prompt people with that?
I'd hand them the entire list. Like, here's every story feat that I will allow in the game. If you guys want to go for something, start working towards it.
Ah. Okay.
So, kind of like that. And speaking of goals, by the way, Twisted Health Conditions, still rocking hard. Finally, for the first time since we have started, has clearly stated, guys, I think we need some goals.
Okay.
They have yet to define them, but somebody has finally suggested goals. And they pulled out the entire listed notes of all the things that they could totally work on. And they're like, let's pick a direction now. I'm very proud of them.
Have they made any, like, do they have a natural leader?
Yes, and he was the one that started the goal conversation.
Interesting.
Yeah, excited. I want to see what kind of goals they put out there.
Yeah, that are you going to have them bring goals to the table, or how are you going to, like, do you have any guidance on it as the game master, or is this something that all the players are just talking amongst themselves?
They're all trying to figure out what to do as a party, as a group. So they will tell me what they want to do, and I will either make it happen or make it happen with consequences.
Well, I mean, at your table, are you going to prompt them for this, or are you going to wait till they bring it up next?
Okay. Now that I understand the question a little better. We're all a part of our Facebook group chat, and this is where they're having the conversation outside of game.
Okay.
So, within that context, I generally stay out of the conversation for the most part. I let them do the whole thing, and I just chime in every now and then.
But it's a space where you can see what's going on.
Yep. So I like it. Do you do anything like that for your groups? Have like a Discord server or a Facebook chat for everybody to hang out, talk in?
Yeah, I got a Discord server that's for my one group, and yeah, I think it's also usually better to just creepily watch and observe and not let them answer their questions amongst each other.
Yep.
So wait till they ping me.
Yeah.
And then pop up.
Like the almighty.
But yeah, they don't have a huge amount of like. I mean, I always think it's a sign of a good session if there's discussion in the chat between weeks. So that's kind of the measure that I use.
Fair. I like that. Both my parties talk quite a bit in between sessions. A lot of the talking I've noticed happens shortly after game, within the first day or so. And then about 3 days before next game, because both of them play bi-weekly, 3 days before the next game, it picks up again. So I'd say that's about 5 days out of 14 that is full of conversation.
Yeah, I'd say that's about the times that pick up for my games as well. I mean,
all right,
getting ready for the next game after the last one. So
yeah, it's neat. It's neat. Other than that, I mean, I haven't had a whole lot of shit go down, but I've got a plan for my contingency heroes group. So I tried something new with them too.
yeah, I thought you were embracing the idea to never come into a game with a pre-plan route.
This is natural progression of one of my characters' background stories. So he's being hunted, and I think the hunter will be upon him this next session.
So when you have a session like when you have this plot line planned, right? There's a hunter coming after this character. How much of these interactions do you have prepped or prepared?
Just the I got a stat sheet for the character in case they decide to engage, and then I just have the initial hook. If they're going to bite or not is up to them.
What's your initial hook?
So when they leave the big pyramid temple that they're in right now, and they make it back to the dry land oasis in the Iban Desert, they will stumble upon the hunter, as we're going to call him for this episode, and he will have murdered a few individuals of the caravan staying at the oasis, and he will be demanding to know where the player character is by name, and the player character will be able to overhear.
So how are you planning on playing this bounty hunter? Because it sounds like you've set up a scenario in which the party has to fight this bounty hunter.
They don't.
Is the bounty hunter fighting to their death?
What's
happening?
They don't have to engage. However, if they do engage,
they're slaughtering people in a caravan and asking for the party specifically. Like
the one member.
They can't not engage unless they just choose to disengage and just leave.
That's actually almost what the party might do. So the history there is that the character, the hunter, comes from one of my players' backstories, who swore a blood oath to seek vengeance on him for a mishap from when he was a little younger. Accidentally caused a fire that killed his parents and sister. And his sister happened to be engaged to the hunter guy. And for the loss of his fiancée, the hunter swore vengeance upon Harold.
Well, in my opinion, it seems like you're kind of forcing a situation in which the party will be heavily incentivized to fight, especially if you want them to be heroes.
Yeah.
I would maybe think about changing the scenario, or you mull it over, of not having the hunter be there anymore when the party arrive, so that the party arrives to the aftermath of the hunter
versus just the very end.
Because when they're reaching the aftermath, then they have to like engage and like kind of fact find about what actually happened and it can slowly realize, oh, they hear about this. Like, one person's going to gather rumors, and they're like, there's a guy asking for Harold, and then they have to confront Harold, and they have to be like, Harold, who is this person? And then Harold gets to explain, like, oh no, this situation. And then the party, they get a little bit more freedom in which they could choose to follow, they could choose to wait, they could try to, like, they have a little bit more of an opportunity to put the fight on their footing.
All right.
Which can then allow you, having a conniving hunter, to then ambush them while they're setting up the ambush or something like that.
I dig that. Yeah, I get it quite a bit. Similar to the hopes that I had, just fast forward to the credits versus the end scene where I was going to start in hopes that they don't engage. But that's me also hoping that they play according to how the current character is feeling at the time. So nope, I like your idea, Eli. That's probably how we're going to do it.
I also like having it being the aftermath, because if you have a player not show up, you could have that person would have recognized this character.
Yeah, that was what it had happened before in Twisted Health Conditions because of the way I had set up everybody's background stories and some of their villains. My party were missing a few players quite a few times, and it really was like it was a kick to the nuts, man, because they missed all the shit that I wanted to engage them in. So, yes, Eli, this is a much better idea. I will go this route. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's very tough to prep things that are very narrowly aimed at one player and only one player. Mm-hmm. It's just tough. So.
Agreed, and that's been
real life always gets in the way.
Yes, and it's been the biggest struggle of how I've done this game so far. It's had a great payoff. Like the payoff has been phenomenal, but the logistics at times becomes a huge struggle. So yeah, having the aftermath is great because, like you said, they can gather information for some of these things, gather rumors. They don't have to pinpoint exactly anybody at this exact moment, but if they have the information, they can farm it from Harold, the character, later, if necessary. So, good plan.
Is Harold going to, or sorry, is this bounty hunter going to be, how tough of a fight is this going to be?
Well, the edict here is that I don't modify CR if the entire party isn't there. Or if
sure, but what's the CR of this bounty hunter you've made?
7.
And what level's the players?
Well, they all drew from the deck of many things, so it's anywhere between 3 and 5.
Oh, okay. So you want it's going to be a tough one, especially if it's individual, but the party can probably take them. Cool.
Yeah. So, I like this, and I'll tell you, playing with the death flags has been a real treat, as well. My players have.
How often has it come up?
The death flag?
Or how many times has someone died when they had their flag down, right? Like where they died, but they didn't have the flag up, so they couldn't die.
So they Saturday morning cartooned it.
Yeah.
Twice. So, twice is all that's happened. That's between 2 parties. More often than not, the people who are playing with their death flags up enter death save territory way more often. So they play a little bit more, I don't want to say recklessly, but they do play way more to their character's violent tendencies. And I appreciate that. So it's kind of
how do your players like it? Do they interact with them a lot?
They tended to forget about the death flags bonus of 1d6 that I give them on every roll while we're in combat initiative. But once they get the hang of that, they remind everybody, if you have your death flag up, roll the extra d6. It saves their asses a lot. And when it adds more damage, or it confirms critical hits, or it saves them on a death save, they get really excited. And that's fun. like it makes their highs higher and their lows. They feel like they're more threatening, but yet they feel like they have a greater chance of success. So
That's how have you felt it compares? Like, well, these players who have their death flag up, it sounds like they're really loving it. What about the people that don't have their flags up?
they tend to play very safe and conservative, but they're also the ones that don't engage much in the overall game. I don't want to say engage as much. I'll say they engage less than the death flag players. So overall, they are there. They're paying attention. They are involved in game, but they do not interact as much or as in depth. Their buy-in is not as high. So,
do you find yourself targeting the people who have their death flags up more than the people that have their death flags down?
you mean targeting as in specifically in combat, or just providing more attention to them?
Either, I mean, in combat, monsters attacking them, or, are traps hitting them more? Like, it just, is there more engagement on that front if you have your flag up?
The engagement on that front is only in response to their behaviors. So monsters are generally tactful, so they will attack those who seem to be doing the most damage or the biggest threat. That's not always somebody with their death flag up. Traps are usually sprung on whoever is leading point, but then at that point, death flag is only in combat, not for traps. But the people who play with their death flags tend to also be the ones who just decide to kick in the door and set traps off. As for providing attention, and I think that we should talk about this further in another episode, hopefully next week, if we remember. When a player buys in heavily and provides a lot of engagement, it is very difficult for the DM to not respond in kind without having other players feel like they're being ignored or forgotten about or less valuable.
Well, I think you can do both. I think you can engage with the players that are engaging the most, and then I think you can still engage with the players that aren't going out of their way. I think you just need to be more tactful. I think the best benefit of pre-preparing scenarios, and I think this is what a lot of prep work for me is trying to create scenarios or situations that can bring the most out of my players who might not always like I have some players who I could throw them in any situation with any amount of like prep, planning, anything, and they will flourish and they will blossom. And then I have some players who just, they still just need a little coaxing in the right direction, or, they're really passionate about one aspect of their character. And so if you engage that, then you have a beautiful flower.
Yeah, I like it when I got players who are either one of those. But what about the players who don't engage much at all? Like the ones who just sort of sit back and roll dice when it's their turn in initiative.
I think that it's, you have to, as a GM, this is where you have to, this is a challenge, is you need to try to engage each of your players and try to hook them in. And in my opinion, if you have a player who just wants to sit and roll dice, good for them, but they should play a board game. And I would rather have someone here who, wants to be a little bit more attentive. So,
yes.
Or engage with the role play a little more. It's a role playing game.
I agree with that. But I understand that not everybody feels super comfortable or knows how to, or wants to buy in that far. So if they just want to roll dice and they're content, I let them roll under the Nope, that sounds bad. I let them roll with it the way they are. But again, I mean, that buy-in is important. One of those things that each table has its own dichotomy and environment, its own ecosphere. kind of have to figure it out as you play through.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of the table ecosystem.
Yes.
Requires
Each
a lot
table,
of work.
It does. And each table has its own ecosystem. Figuring out all of them can be a pain, but it's well worth it. You set the precedent in session 0.
Yes. Yep. And consistency and friendship.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll remember to ask you a question next time about friendship at a game, at a table. But these last 45 minutes have rolled by so quick, and I feel like I've done nothing but talk the entire time. So...
Well, it's a podcast. We tried to do that interpretive dance, but didn't turn out well.
Nope. But anytime there's dead space, Eli is rocking those moves.
I like to dance. Got the boogie fever.
Sounds good. Guys, check us out online, epictablegames.com, or on Facebook. Thanks for checking in Side Quests. We'll see you next week.
See you later, alligator. See you in a while, crocodile.
Okay, new intro. We've changed the name, and we're still using the word paladin. Paladin. I mean, it hasn't been used in the English language in about 200 years, but okay.